around you. I find that most people are pretty respectful in front of my face. When they're not around me...
Prince, the Purple One, the Minneapolis genius who redefined what it meant to be a musical artist. The man who could play every instrument, write symphonies in his sleep, and turn a 3-minute song into a spiritual experience. But behind those iconic purple outfits and that otherworldly talent was a perfectionist harboring explosive hatred for musicians he considered frauds, sellouts, and talentless pretenders.
Chronicled in deep dispute with my record label.
Which is Warner Brothers, right?
Prince wasn't just a multi-instrumentalist. He was a musical purist who believed in complete artistic control and authentic expression. When other artists achieved success through methods he considered cheap, artificial, or musically bankrupt, his legendary temper erupted into feuds that lasted decades and reshaped the music industry. Tonight, we're exposing the dark side of Prince's genius. From backstage confrontations to public musical battles, these are the 6 bands that discovered crossing the Purple One meant facing the wrath of music's most uncompromising perfectionist. You think you know the mystical, spiritual Prince? Think again. This is the explosive countdown of the 6 bands Prince hated the most, and the shocking reasons their conflicts revealed the ruthless competitor behind the musical legend. Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson represented Prince's greatest professional obsession and personal frustration. Both were child prodigies who became global superstars. But their contrasting approaches to fame, music production, and artistic control created a rivalry that consumed Prince for decades and shaped his entire career philosophy. The conflict began in their teenage years when both were emerging as solo artists after group success.
The rivalry between you and Mr. Jackson?
Oh, not to me, no.
Okay. So I love the story.
Music industry veterans describe early tensions when critics started comparing their vocal abilities and stage presence, with Jackson initially receiving more mainstream attention, while Prince was considered more musically complex but less commercially accessible. According to recording engineers who worked with both artists, Prince's competitive fury reached its peak during the Thriller era, when Jackson's album achieved unprecedented success. Studio insiders witnessed Prince's obsessive analysis of Jackson's production techniques, leading to increasingly elaborate arrangements designed to prove his superior musicianship and creative control. The rivalry exploded into public warfare when James Brown invited both performers on stage during a 1983 concert. Concert footage shows Prince's uncomfortable retreat when Jackson's presence overshadowed his own performance, creating a humiliation that haunted him for years and intensified his determination to prove his superiority. Music journalists documented Prince's cutting remarks about manufactured pop stars who rely on other people's songwriting and production during interviews, where he emphasized his complete artistic independence. His criticism was clearly directed at Jackson's collaborative approach, which Prince viewed as evidence of inferior artistic vision. Wham! Wham! Triggered Prince's deepest fears about the music industry's direction toward disposable pop entertainment. George Michael's polished vocals and Andrew Ridgeley's minimal contributions represented everything Prince believed was destroying serious musicianship, creating a rivalry that exposed his contempt for manufactured success. The initial conflict arose when Wham! Wake Me Up Before You Go Go dominated radio, while Prince's more sophisticated compositions received less commercial attention. Music programmers describe his fury at radio stations' preference for simple-minded dance pop over complex musical arrangements that showcased real artistry. According to industry insiders who witnessed recording sessions, Prince became obsessed with proving that authentic music could outperform Wham's bubblegum nonsense. Studio engineers describe his increasingly elaborate arrangements designed to demonstrate superior musicianship and songwriting sophistication. The rivalry escalated when Wham! Achieved massive success with minimal instrumental proficiency, while Prince spent countless hours perfecting every musical detail. Concert promoters witnessed his bitter response to their commercial achievements, where he accused them of insulting audiences' intelligence with nursery rhyme music. Music journalists documented Prince's cutting remarks about manufactured pop acts during interviews, where he defended artistic integrity against what he called corporate assembly line entertainment. His criticism became particularly harsh when discussing the music industry's promotion of style over substance. The conflict reached its peak when George Michael began receiving critical acclaim as a serious artist while still associated with Wham's pop image. Music critics describe Prince's frustrated response to Michael's evolving reputation, suggesting that real artists don't need to escape from their past because they never compromise their vision. Madonna should have been Prince's natural ally as a Minneapolis-connected artist breaking musical boundaries, but instead became his most bitter rival in a war over artistic authenticity, sexual expression, and who truly controlled their creative destiny. Their conflict divided the music industry and exposed Prince's complicated relationship with female artists achieving independent success. The tension began when both artists were establishing themselves as provocative performers in the early 1980s. Music journalists started comparing their approaches to sexuality and rebellion, with some critics suggesting Madonna was more daring in challenging social conventions. These comparisons infuriated Prince, who viewed his own artistic risks as more substantial than her calculated controversies. According to studio musicians who knew both camps, Prince's resentment exploded when Madonna achieved massive commercial success while maintaining less personal control over her music production. He dismissed her as a dancer pretending to be a musician and accused her of stealing attention from real artists through manufactured scandals. The conflict intensified when Madonna's Like a Virgin dominated charts, while Prince's Purple Rain was still climbing. Industry executives witnessed heated exchanges between their respective camps, with Prince's associates suggesting Madonna was riding trends rather than creating them, and copying his provocative approach without the musical substance. The rivalry became deeply personal when Madonna began receiving feminist praise for her independent image, while Prince faced criticism for his treatment of female musicians in his bands. Entertainment journalists documented his angry response to these comparisons, where he defended his artistic collaborations while attacking her pseudo-feminist posturing. Duran Duran. Duran Duran represented everything Prince despised about style over substance in 1980s music. While Prince crafted complex musical arrangements and played every instrument himself, he viewed Duran Duran as fashion models masquerading as musicians, achieving success through image manipulation rather than musical talent. The tension began when both acts dominated MTV in the early 1980s, with music journalists comparing their visual impact and pop appeal. Critics praised Duran Duran's sophisticated European style, while sometimes describing Prince as more American and raw. These comparisons infuriated Prince, who viewed himself as infinitely more talented than what he called pretty boys with synthesizers. According to studio engineers who worked during this era, Prince's resentment exploded when Duran Duran's videos received heavy MTV rotation, while his more musically complex work faced resistance from programmers. He dismissed the band as fashion victims who can't play their own instruments and accused them of reducing music to a modeling contest. The conflict intensified when Duran Duran collaborated with high-profile producers, while Prince maintained strict control over his own production. Music industry insiders witnessed his angry response to their commercial strategy, calling them manufactured pop stars who need other people to make them sound good. Recording session musicians describe Prince's obsession with proving multi-instrumental superiority over Duran Duran's collaborative approach. He began emphasizing his ability to create entire albums alone, making pointed comments about real musicians versus studio constructions. The rivalry influenced Prince's determination to showcase authentic musicianship in his videos and performances, leading to more instrument-focused presentations that demonstrated his superior technical abilities. His hatred for their approach strengthened his commitment to artistic independence and musical authenticity. The Time. The Time should have been Prince's greatest success story as the band he created, controlled, and produced. Instead, they became his most painful betrayal when Morris Day and the band members began demanding creative independence and public recognition for their contributions to Prince's musical empire. The conflict began when The Time started receiving independent acclaim for their performances and recordings, despite Prince writing most of their material and controlling their production. Band members described growing resentment over being treated as musical puppets, while Prince received all creative credit for their collaborative work. According to studio engineers who witnessed recording sessions, Prince's control over The Time was absolute and suffocating. He dictated every musical arrangement, vocal delivery, and stage performance, while forbidding band members from discussing their actual contributions to the music-making process. The rebellion exploded when Morris Day began asserting his own personality and creative ideas during live performances, deviating from Prince's strict instructions. Concert promoters describe backstage confrontations where Prince accused Day of betraying the vision and destroying carefully crafted musical concepts through ego-driven improvisation. Music industry insiders witnessed the devastating moment when The Time demanded recognition as independent artists rather than Prince's creations. Legal documents reveal the complex web of contracts that prevented band members from claiming credit for their own performances and musical contributions. The conflict became personal when band members began speaking publicly about Prince's controlling nature and unreasonable demands. Entertainment journalists documented Prince's furious response to these revelations, where he accused his former protégés of biting the hand that fed them and lying about their minimal creative contributions. Warner Brothers records. The most shocking entry isn't a band at all. It's Prince's own record label, Warner Brothers, whose executives became his most hated adversaries in a war over artistic freedom, creative control, and ownership of his musical legacy that consumed the final decades of his career. The conflict began when Warner Brothers executives started demanding more commercial material and questioning Prince's experimental directions. Record company insiders describe increasingly hostile meetings where label heads criticized his prolific output and demanded fewer, more marketable releases that would maximize profit margins. According to music industry lawyers, Prince's hatred for the corporate system exploded when he discovered the extent to which record contracts limited his ownership of his own creative work. Legal documents reveal his shock at learning that decades of his music would remain corporate property regardless of his artistic contributions. The warfare escalated when Warner Brothers refused to release his music at his preferred pace, creating a backlog of completed albums that Prince felt were being held hostage by corporate greed. Studio engineers describe his frustrated response to these restrictions, leading to increasingly rebellious artistic choices designed to challenge corporate expectations. Music journalists documented the moment Prince began appearing with "Slave" written on his face, symbolically representing his view of the artist-label relationship. His decision to change his name to an unpronounceable symbol was a direct attack on Warner Brothers' control over his identity and musical legacy. Prince's feuds revealed a perfectionist at war with an industry that couldn't contain his genius. His hatred sparked a revolution in artistic independence. Which conflict shocked you most? Like, comment, and subscribe for more music revelations.